with permanent members of the Security Council. Now, Ukrainian President Zelensky has backed the strikes in Iran. He has said, and I quote, "Although Ukrainians never threatened Iran, the Iranian regime chose to become Putin's accomplice and supplied him with Shahed drones, and not only the drones themselves, but also the technology that produces them. Iran also provided other weapons to Russia. It's fair to give the Iranian people a chance to rid themselves of a terrorist regime and to guarantee security for all nations that have suffered from terror that is originating from Iran." I want to get in General Dillon on this. So you have the Russian president speaking to P5 members, trying to, play peacemaker. Maybe a Security Council meeting will happen later tonight. And then you have the Ukrainian president saying that these strikes are justified because Iran has been supporting Russia with its Shahed drones and other drones in the Russia-Ukraine war. How do you see this, General Dillon?
Zaka, the non-alignment, that is KNOW, non-alignment, that is Ukraine will side with America, Russia and China will side with Iran. All those are known, so those voices will come out. We talked about the UN Security Council, we talked about the EU, we talked about some other countries. All these other voices, they will come out, but they will also covertly tell everyone that we are looking the other side. We are not much serious about what we say in public. So these people who are firmly behind this group or that group will speak in the favor of their own partners. But most importantly, the point is, which came out about Pakistan also, and Sushant Singh also talked about Pakistan nuclear weapons being targeted at India. I just want to amplify that point a little more, and I want to support the argument given by Sushant Singh. Asim Munir on American soil had said that we will take down half the world with us. Now, that is the seriousness of Pakistan about use of nuclear weapons. So we are looking at another thing about Pakistan, and as a military man, I must bring to the table. If you see, the air defense is the main asset of Iran, which is protecting Iran's assets. Now, they are all directed towards Israel or towards South. If the Iranian air defense setup has to be weakened, the eastern flank of Iran, that is facing Pakistan, has to be opened. Now, if eastern front has to be opened, Pakistan's airspace or Pakistan's air bases should be used or have to be used by the Americans. And then Pakistan is the only country in the region which can be bought by a few dollars.
Do you see that happening, General? General, do you see that happening? That the Pakistanis will allow their bases to be used by America and Israel?
Just yesterday, I think we missed out a very important statement where America said we support Pakistan against Afghanistan.
Yeah, they did.
America has never made a statement like this, any local, conflict going in between two countries. And now this statement that we support Pakistan against Afghanistan, which is hardly a military power, also goes to prove they're pampering Pakistan. And if the Pakistani side airspace is used, that way Iranian air defense will weaken to 50%. And then it will be easy for them to destroy the military, economic, or the political targets with much better ease. That is the point I want to make.
That's a significant one. Sushant, you're the resident Pakistan expert. Do you see that happening? Because if that happens, then basically Iran is getting hit both from the west, which is from the Pakistani side, and it's getting hit, from the east, from the Pakistani side, and also from the west, which is where America and Israel are hitting them right now from.
Yeah, so Zaka, it will be very risky for the Pakistanis to be seen to be openly siding with the United States in an attack on Iran. It will have repercussions for the regime, but it is entirely possible that the military dictatorship in Pakistan might figure it out and think that they can bludgeon the opposition. Frankly, there's very little to choose between what the Pakistanis do to their people and what the Iranians do to their people, in terms of political rights. The Pakistanis steal an election just as much as anybody else. So the fact of the matter is that the Pakistanis can keep saying some government is not representative as if their own government is representative. They've completely stolen an election. But there is just one doubt in my mind, which is that the American dependence on Pakistani airspace to attack the eastern flank of Iran is not really that compelling in the sense that they can attack eastern Iran even from the sea route. They have their naval bases, their floating naval bases, which are the aircraft carriers. They have the capabilities to attack Iran from there, and it's a very short flying distance from some of their bases in the Middle East. So they can do that. It's not like the kind of compulsion they had when they were operating inside Afghanistan, where they definitely needed the Pakistani land routes and the airspace.
Okay.
Those conditions are not there insofar as Iran is concerned. But for all you know, and given the proclivity of Pakistanis to sell themselves for a few dollars, they might actually tell the Americans that, "Ji Huzur, please come, we will give you our territory, use our bases, attack the Iranians. They are Shias anyways, they're not even Muslims." The Pakistani Muslims are quite capable of doing something like this, especially the Punjabis.
Okay. I want to try and see, I believe Shireen Bhan is speaking with the visiting dignitary, the Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney. Let's try and see if we can cut across to that. All right.
Have made episodic progress, but not comprehensive progress. Those efforts intensified in recent weeks without resolution. It's led us to this. It is a serious conflict. In a serious conflict, you have to make choices. We have a consistent position. Prevention of Iran obtaining nuclear weapons, prevention of the state-sponsored terrorism that has plagued the Middle East in multiple forms, and support for the Iranian people. And the consequence of that will be determined by whether Iran de-escalates. We call on all parties to protect civilian lives as best as possible in what is a very serious situation.
If Iran chooses not to de-escalate at this point in time and we continue to see a protracted escalation, when you say that you support the US and you support Israel, what could that support entail? Do you see Canada getting involved as well?
Well, look, we have not been party to the military build-up to this or the military planning of this, so it is not envisioned that we would be part of it moving forward. But certainly we have both the Minister of Finance, myself with the President, the Minister of Finance with their counterpart, Minister of Foreign Affairs, I should say, and myself with the President. We've had a series of discussions over recent weeks about the possibility of this happening if the diplomatic efforts were not successful. It's been very clear the threat of what has now been realized in terms of military action. It should have been clear to an Iranian regime which has refused to dismantle fully its nuclear program and continues to pose a serious threat to the region.
As a former central banker, what could this mean now potentially for the commodities markets, and what sort of a challenge does it pose for central banks as well as for fiscal policy around the world? In the very short term, you get a risk premium in situations like this. You'll get a risk premium, particularly obviously in energy markets, oil markets. There is military activity around the Straits of Hormuz, which is an obvious choke point. It comes at a time. First and foremost, this is about human lives. It's about establishing stability in the region, the will of the Iranian people being respected. That, first and foremost, that. When you go back to commodity markets and inflation, it comes at a time when commodity price inflation has been lower. Mm-hmm. Oil markets have been soft as a whole, so there'll be some firmness and some spike on that, but I don't view it as I view the issue as a fundamental issue of geopolitics, of ending state-sponsored terrorism, ending nuclear proliferation in Iran, and of course protecting civilian lives as much as possible, as opposed to majoring on the economic side, which I don't view as being, in the fullness of time, that material.
Let me now talk to you about India and your visit here to India. As you pointed out, this is the first bilateral visit by a Canadian Prime Minister in the last 8 years. And before we talk about the reset, we need to talk about the repair. And where do you believe you find yourself in that process of repair?
All right, so the Canadian Prime Minister throwing his weight entirely behind this American-Israeli operation, military strikes against Iran. I just want to get a quick word in from Michael Kugelman on this. So the Canadian Prime Minister, is this also a way of him trying to sort of soothe the ruffled feathers with President Trump of late? Canada and America have had all kinds of problems when it comes to their trading relationship. Or we're not seeing the Canadian Prime Minister take the same line as, let's say, the French president or the Russian president for that matter.
Right. I mean, we've already seen some other leaders from the West appear to come out in support of Israel and the United States. For example, the Australian Prime Minister came out with what came across as a pretty strong statement in support of the Iranian people, the Iranian public, which could be seen as going against the regime. It's going to be very delicate in terms of how America's allies handle things, and particularly those that are geographically located closer to the conflict. So, you know, as we know, some leaders are more concerned than others about upsetting or provoking the president. But, you know, given how explosive a situation this conflict has become, I think that everyone, that all heads of state, heads of government, are just going to be very careful about how they message their views on the war, keeping in mind the conflict itself, but also how President Trump might react.
Okay, just give me a moment, gentlemen. We're getting another piece of breaking news. Reuters is now reporting that the Iranian Defence Minister Amir Nasirzadeh and the IRGC top commander Mahmoud Pakpour have both been killed in the Israeli attacks. Earlier, Israeli media had also reported that the Defence Minister and the leading commander of the IRGC both had been eliminated. Now it's been confirmed by a Western news agency in Reuters. These are two big targets, no doubt about it, and this will have far-reaching resonance in Iran and beyond. But the two principal protagonists, which is the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and the President Masoud Pezeshkian, both, we don't have any word yet on what is their status, what is their fate, are they still alive? The last we heard about the Supreme Leader was that he was taken into a hidden bunker. Of course, President Trump has made it amply clear that his objective for this military operation, Lion's Roar, is what the Israelis are calling it, Epic Fury is what the Americans are calling it, is regime change. He wants the Ayatollah regime to be deposed, and he wants the Iranian people to take back their government. I want to go back to Ambassador Dogra on this. What do you make of this latest confirmation now from Reuters that the Defense Minister and one of the lead commanders of the IRGC both have been eliminated in these strikes?
Well, even if the Supreme Leader is eliminated, I think Iranians have already sort of figured for that consequence. They have the second line of leadership who will step in. So hopefully this is a serious blow, but this will not be an irreplaceable blow. The other question, coming back to your UN Security Council meeting, I think that's a very interesting new dimension, because normally when, for example, the second Gulf War, America went to UN to seek permission in order to start the war for a regime change. This time, it has not cared for that. Putin's move to involve UN, I think, has to be seen in that context, that this is a sort of a move to convey the message to the world and to America that, look, regime change can only happen if the United Nations puts its weight behind it and is convinced that there is need for intervention.
Okay.
Otherwise, individual intervention by America and Israel, for your Israeli guest, is not a legal sanction by any international standards.
Okay, Ambassador Dogra, thank you for that. I'm going to take a quick break here in the program, but we've got a lot more happening on this front. It's a full-blown confrontation between America and Israel and Iran on the other side. It was something that had been building up. There was great anticipation for this over the last couple of months, with this armada of battleships and destroyers and cruisers being moved to the Persian Gulf. And now the moment of war has begun. It's happened over the last 6 hours or so. What might the next steps be? What might the end game be All of this we'll discuss right on the other side of this quick break. Stay with us in our continuing coverage of Iran under attack.
Are reporting missile attacks.
Introducing Motorola's signature. Introducing Motorola's signature.
करियर से अर्ली रिटायरमेंट के लिए रेडी और अपने पैशन को करियर बनाने के लिए भी रेडी। पीएनबी मेट लाइफ रिटायरमेंट प्लान्स के साथ लॉक करें 10.2% गारंटीड एन्युटी रेट।
Are reporting missile attacks. Those are the sirens in Bahrain, one of the countries reporting those strikes. Now, officials say a missile hit the service center of the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. You can see here smoke billowing. And you can see here a missile flying over Erbil, Iraq. Jordan and Qatar said that they also intercepted missiles. Our team is up and covering the breaking story from around the world. We'll get to Paula Hancock's in a moment. But first, we'll go to CNN's Jeremy Diamond in Tel Aviv. Jeremy, what's happening there?
Well, Victor, we have been witnessing over the last few hours the beginnings of Iran's retaliation for those U.S. and Israeli strikes targeting a variety of Iranian targets over the course of the last several hours. So far, we haven't witnessed any major impacts in Israel as a result of what an Israeli military official tells me have been dozens of Iranian ballistic missiles that have been targeted at Israel. It appears that the majority of those have so far been intercepted. This all began at about 8:15 a.m. local time here this morning, with air raid sirens sounding across the country, warning Israelis of a state of emergency due to the fact that the United States and Israel had begun launching strikes against Iran. Those strikes cast off the diplomatic track that had been
are reporting missile attacks. Those are the sirens in Bahrain, one of the countries reporting those strikes. Now, officials say a missile hit the service center of the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. You can see here smoke billowing. And you can see here a missile flying over Erbil, Iraq. Jordan and Qatar said that they also intercepted missiles. Our team is up and covering the breaking story from around the world. We'll get to Paula Hancock's in a moment. But first, we'll go to CNN's Jeremy Diamond in Tel Aviv. Jeremy, what's happening there?
Well, Victor, we have been witnessing over the last few hours the beginnings of Iran's retaliation for those U.S. and Israeli strikes targeting a variety of Iranian targets over the course of the last several hours. So far, we haven't witnessed any major impacts in Israel as a result of what an Israeli military official tells me have been dozens of Iranian ballistic missiles that have been targeted at Israel. It appears that the majority of those have so far been intercepted. This all began at about 8:15 8:15 a.m. local time here this morning, with air raid sirens sounding across the country, warning Israelis of a state of emergency due to the fact that the United States and Israel had begun launching strikes against Iran. Those strikes cast off the diplomatic track that had been moving forward over the course of the last several weeks. It came just one day after the Omani foreign minister, who was mediating these negotiations, said he believed that a deal was potentially at hand.
So America has decided that the Iranian regime has to change. So we've got to go ahead, and because we don't like you, you got nuclear weapons, so we got to do away with you. Sometime back in Bangladesh, they said, all right, we don't like the current leader, so we got to take you off. Do you think nations should have this power to engineer regime changes in governments they like or don't like?
Thank you. You know, all countries' situations are not the same. So I think that mullah regime should be changed, because you know that so many women were murdered because they did not want to wear the compulsory hijab. So this mullah regime must be changed, and a secularist government should be there in Iran. But in Bangladesh, what happened in Bangladesh, it was actually the jihadi supported government came to power, like Muhammad Yunus. He supported jihadis and Islamic terrorists, and he destroyed the country. You know, he wanted to remove the history of 1971 war against Pakistan, and the people who were collaborators of Pakistani army in 1971 were supported by Muhammad Yunus, and also Jamaat-e-Islami, the Islamist party, is also supported by Muhammad Yunus. And now it is better that not Jamaat-e-Islami, Bangladesh Nationalist Party in power after election. So it is good. So
yeah, so I was trying to highlight this contradiction, but I put the question another way. So in Afghanistan, the Taliban and the mullahs are okay. In Bangladesh, to remove one regime, radicals, giving flight to radicals is okay. In Iran, we don't like the mullah regime, so we want to remove them. Now, can the world afford to have a duplicitous position about radicals and about radical mullahs, especially radical Islam?
no, nowhere actually radical Islam or radical mullahs are okay. In Afghanistan, Taliban are in power. They don't allow any girls to go to school. They don't allow any women to go to work. You know, it's not good. Maybe Afghanistan is now supported by some countries, but it doesn't mean that Afghanistan is in good shape. So women have been suffering in Afghanistan, and this mullah regime must be removed, and a secularist party should be in power, and where, there should not be any Islamic laws, there should not be any religious laws. Laws should be based on equality and justice, and women should get, the opportunity to live as human beings.
Are reporting missile attacks. Those are the sirens in Bahrain, one of the countries reporting those strikes. Now, officials say a missile hit the service center of the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. You can see here smoke billowing. And you can see here a missile flying over Erbil, Iraq. Jordan and Qatar said that they also intercepted missiles. Our team is up and covering the breaking story from around the world. We'll get to Paula Hancock's in a moment. But first, we'll go to CNN's Jeremy Diamond in Tel Aviv. Jeremy, what's happening there?
Well, Victor, we have been witnessing over the last few hours the beginnings of Iran's retaliation for those U.S. and Israeli strikes targeting a variety of Iranian targets over the course of the last several hours. So far, we haven't witnessed any major impacts in Israel as a result of what an Israeli military official tells me have been dozens of Iranian ballistic missiles that have been targeted at Israel. It appears that the majority of those have so far been intercepted. This all began at about 8:15 a.m. local time here this morning with air raid sirens sounding across the country, warning Israelis of a state of emergency due to the fact that the United States and Israel had begun launching strikes against Iran. Those strikes cast off the diplomatic track that had been moving forward over the course of the last several weeks. It came just one day after the Omani foreign minister who was mediating these negotiations said he believed that a deal was potentially at hand. But it seems like President Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu lost patience with those negotiations and decided to go the military route instead, striking dozens of targets inside Iran, everything from Iran's ballistic missile program, its nuclear facilities, as well as senior Iranian targets. I'm told by two Israeli sources familiar with the matter that the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, was the target of some of these Israeli.
Just had a bomb alert here in Tel Aviv a few minutes back. I don't know if you heard that, Arunima. I don't know if you heard that loud blast.
Well, the man in the hot seat is Mr. Rajesh Kumar Singh. He's India's Defence Secretary, and he's in on a day when there's been another war that has broken out, this time in the Gulf. And as you know, this morning we got news that the US and Israel conducted what they are calling preemptive strikes on Iran, not unexpected. And the Iranians have hit back. And they have targeted several US bases. They've also targeted, of course, places in Israel, US bases in the Gulf, in different countries. There's a whole list out there. So we speak in troubled, clamorous times, Mr. Singh. I want us to first look at this and focus a little bit on this latest conflagration. India obviously is going to be in focus because we are friends with Tehran and Tel Aviv. How will India approach this?
Well, Rahul, the events are moving pretty fast, so I don't want to, make too many comments at this stage. But I do want to say that I'm happy that we're in India. We are an oasis in this world where there is a lot of geopolitical flux that is of conflicts around the world, including in the Middle East and in Europe for that matter. So I think the present government under Prime Minister Modi has given us a level of both macroeconomic as well as geopolitical stability. And I'm happy that we are living in this country. But of course, in the Middle East, we have stakes there. We have a very large diaspora. We'll be watching developments very, very closely. We have strong strategic partnerships with some of those countries, and we will have to sort of continue to maintain those. Our policy is to have a multi-aligned kind of a diplomatic engagement. So let's see where it goes. But as of now, I would only say that we hope things will settle down, both for our own interests in terms of its impact on our oil supplies, but also for the people of those countries.
Well, let me ask you this, because we also have an important stake in Iran. In a sense, there is the Chabahar port. We were, and this is what has come out in the media, that we were asked to pull back from that arrangement that we have, and we secured an exception, which has now, of course, we've been put on notice, so to speak, by Trump. How does that affect India's strategic play in that particular neck of the woods if we have to give up our interest in Chabahar?
Well, Rahul, the short answer is that we'll have to sort of negotiate our way to ensure that our interest in Chabahar is sustained, and it brings us the benefits that we need in terms of access to trade routes, Central Asia, etc., and to Afghanistan. So, yeah, I mean, since things are moving very, very quickly in terms of developments, let's see where this takes us. But as far as I'm concerned, we intend to ensure that our investment in Chabahar yields us the dividends that we need.
How do we do that?
We do that by negotiating. I mean, you would have asked us, a few months back, you would have been wondering how would we manage the U.S. Trade relationship along with the defense engagement. And the fact is that we've been able to manage both. So let's see where this takes us. It's a bit early to say, but the intent is obviously to negotiate our way into a situation where our investment in Chabahar is protected.
So let me ask you, because I'll just extrapolate on this. India is a firm believer in plurilateralism, multilateralism, and guards its strategic autonomy, as you know, fiercely. But here we have a situation where there are tugs now. Increasingly in a conflict-ridden world, we're expected to take stands, whether it's in the United Nations General Assembly or, of course, by some of our partners. And the United States perhaps is expecting India to stand with it. We've already made a commitment to Israel that we are going to stand with it in the interests of the defense of its realm. The Prime Minister made that commitment. Do you think that alienates Iran and by extension our friends in the BRICS world that support Iran and have a problem with US unilateralism?
So let me take you to the recently concluded international fleet review that we had in Vizag a few days back, where there were 74 odd countries that took part. Incidentally, that included both the Iranian Navy and the US and the Russians and a bunch of other countries. So India's strategic autonomy and its convening power is quite distinct in that sense. We are able to maintain these high level of alignment with different countries. Of course, it goes without saying that with some countries, the relationship is a bit closer. It is more strategic, and you mentioned one of them, Israel, maybe a few others, but I don't want to mention them right now. There's no need to differentiate among friends, but India's ability to strike and align and engage with different countries, even if when they are in conflict with each other, has been sort of shown over the years.
Just to press you on that, you said that we don't want to differentiate, but when we don't take a stand, for example, in the United Nations on issues that are shaped as moral questions, and the number of our abstentions has actually gone up over the years. I'm not saying that we're the only ones, because other powers are also abstaining more often than not. So we're not isolated or alone in this. But when we see these abstentions going up, many people will say that we are actually differentiating. Specifically, if this matter of Iran comes up, which it will in the UNGA, because it's not going to be resolved in the UNSC, it's going to come up for vote. What do you think India should be doing? We haven't heard from the Indian government as of, I checked, literally, should we at least express serious concern, or should we stand up and say that perhaps it's going a bit too far? We have a political interest also. We have ties with the civilizational ties with Iran. How far can we just keep sitting on the fence and hedging?
Well, I'm sure the Ministry of External Affairs will give a response. It's fairly early days. It's not even a day, to be very frank. And about taking a stance on every issue, I think this is the time when you have a situation where it is kind of becoming a situation where every man is for himself, where to some extent might is right is resurfacing. It's better that I don't sort of get into the diplomatic sort of domain so much.
I appreciate that. That is not really your area, and I will respect those red lines. But let me bring you back to the larger questions that have emerged now after Operation Sindoor. How do you see, after Operation Sindoor, the defense scenario changing? India obviously needs to now take into account its experience in Operation Sindoor. How does it equip itself for the next few decades? What are the learnings?
Well, it was an important learning experience. It showed the certain things clearly, the primacy of standoff weapons, of air power, of unmanned systems of different types, both for ISR and for combat. All of those areas revealed certain strengths that we had. They also revealed certain capability voids that were there, and those are being filled up at a very rapid pace. We've created this accelerated green channel for emergency procurements to fill some of those capability voids. In addition, you would have observed that we've got a significant jump in our modernization budget for the year, for the next financial year of 24%. That would enable us to ensure that in different areas for the Air Force, we will need more fighters, more refuelers, and more AWACS. For the Navy, we need more platforms, including underwater platforms. And as I mentioned, we need more unmanned systems of different types for both ISR and for combat. So all of those areas are being addressed very, very speedily in terms of faster procurements. We've signed, as I keep mentioning, a record 2.9 lakh crore worth of contracts last year. This year, we've already hit about 2 lakh crores of contract. The intent is to give visibility to industry in terms of what they need to do all the way down the value chain. And we're going to keep up the pace until every area of where we have a capability issue is speedily addressed.
So the DAC has gone ahead and approved purchases of the Rafales, as you know. There are also conversations happening with the Russians for the purchase of the advanced Sukhoi. There's also, of course, US interest. Which direction are we headed? Are we going to keep all three engaged? Are they all three players that we're looking at to acquire aircraft and other weapon systems, specifically aircraft? Let's talk about those first.
So on aircraft, you're aware that we've indicated our willingness to go ahead in principle with the MRFA, the Rafales that you mentioned, subject to two conditions: that they have to be largely made in India, and that they would have a minimum level of indigenous content, which we are going to negotiate with them, and we will have a threshold that we have in mind. And also the ability to integrate our weapons on them, if not complete access to the source code, at least to the ICDs, so that our weapons can be integrated. So subject to us able to negotiate those outcomes, we will proceed with that program in a big way. It also gives us the advantage of having a second fighter jet production line in the country, since so far we've essentially had only one. player in that area. And as you are aware, for our own fifth generation program, the AMCA, we are in the process of shortlisting, most probably a private player for building the prototypes. So as of now, the direction is clear. We are going to do the MRFA program with Rafale. Our fifth generation fighter is going to be the AMCA. On the other two candidates that you mentioned, we've not taken a call as yet, but as of now, that is the way we are proceeding.
So you're saying we haven't taken a call on the Russian and the American offer that's on the table?
Yeah.
That's right. That's an important bit of news coming out from Rising Bharat Summit. I know that it's not possible for you to give names of any preferred partners, but will India take a call on procuring the fifth generation fighters this year? Because the deadlines that were inviolable at one time, as far as our own AMCA is concerned, are constantly being pushed. And I know that the Air Chief has also expressed his disappointment.
I wouldn't be able to give a timeline on this because, frankly, we've not really applied our mind. There are too many other things happening around the world. It's going to be a major strategic decision. Once we take a call, the media will get to know. But as of now, we don't have a decision on that.
The Air Chief did express his disappointment at the fact that indigenous production is not meeting the timelines. What is the issue here, number one? Number two, on the issue of procuring engines or manufacturing our own engines, where are we as of now? You have said that you're hoping to involve private players. Have anyone come forth? Is there a lot of interest?
So, two, three different issues here. I think you were talking about the delays with regard to the Air Chief's statement is, I guess, about the light combat aircraft Tejas' program.
That's right.
Now, in that program, there is a dependency on the engine, which has caused delays in the past. But 5 engines have come now, and the expectation is that 20 more will come in this calendar year. The delay in terms of taking deliveries right now is in relation to integration of certain weapons and radar and EW systems, which is ongoing. Hopefully that will get sorted out by April this year. The intent really is that now that HAL has an order for 180 of these LCA Mark 1A aircraft, that they will be able to perfect this as not only it is a very, very safe, very, very dynamic aircraft, but there is an issue in terms of integration of adequate weaponry on it. Hopefully that will be perfected over the course of this order in the next 1 year or so, I would imagine, or even earlier. So that process will enable then this large sort of increase in our fighter aircraft inventory. In addition, when I mentioned the private sector part, I was really talking about the AMCA. For the jet engine program that you mentioned, which is an important import dependency for us, has been for a long time. The government is intending to have one of our labs, the GTRE, a DRDO lab, tie up with an international engine house, subject to the condition that they tie IPR West within the country. Now that process of taking an approval for that program, which will be a significant and a fairly financially large program, is currently underway.
So I'll come back to the Tejas question in just a few moments, but I just want to go back to where we were with Russia, purchase of Sukhoi 57s and so on and so forth. Have sanctions and now, of course, the talks with regards to the framework of a trade deal with the United States in any way impeded on India's interest in acquiring Russian weapon systems, A, B, the Sukhoi 57?
I can assure you that that is not the case. There has been no sort of overflow from the trade negotiations on our defense engagement. In fact, we signed a 10-year defense cooperation framework in December, much before the trade deal got finalized. So that's not the case. We continue to take from the Russians equipment that we need, and we will do so with the Americans and the French or anybody else where we identify weapons or platforms that we really need. But more than any of this, we really want to double down on indigenization and try to make sure that either we do it ourselves, or at least where the TRL level is a bit low in India, at least we get TOT and do it through the Make in India route.
But is the Sukhoi 57 on the table? Because a number of people don't think it's the best.
Yeah, so again, which is why I mentioned that we've not taken a call on this yet. And the issue that you mentioned, the comparisons, all of that, I would not be able to really answer. But yes, all of those issues have prevented us from taking a final call on this.
Coming back to Tejas, what is the initial feedback on the recent Tejas crash?
Well, this was an incident at the ground level. It is a relatively minor accident. It did not involve an ejection. The pilot was safe. There is some damage to the aircraft. But because it involved some level of malfunctioning, that is why there is the entire aircraft fleet is still operational, but meanwhile the precautionary checks are being done with respect to this particular element. So I would say that it's not that serious an accident, but nonetheless, as a precaution, we are ensuring that the safety checks are done, which is why everybody's been saying that they didn't take part in Vayu Shakti, that was the reason. But the aircraft are still operational.
But nothing that happened in the Dubai Air Show has led to the decision not to showcase the Tejas?
No, nothing to do with that. This was linked to as I mentioned, a ground level incident which happened only much after the Dubai incident. As far as the overall safety record of LCA is concerned, you would see that from 2019 onwards, it has had several thousand hours of flying, and its safety record is one of the most robust in the world.
So are you saying that the Dubai incident was an aberration?
That's what I'm saying, yes. Correct.
And there was no underlying technical issue which would raise red flags?
Yes, I mean, that is the indication that we have from the Air Force and from HAL.
How do you expect defense production and exports to go up? You said Atmanirbharta is obviously the most important spoke in the wheel now going forward. How do we get to the point where we become Atmanirbhar, and what is the timeline that we have in mind? And let's look across all sectors.
Well, I mean, the way you make it happen is by taking certain policy decisions and then sticking to those. One of those is that we don't do any imports until we do them only as an exception, and that too, every such decision goes to the entire Defence Acquisition Council, which means the Raksha Mantri personally has to clear those any imports. The second is that we ensure that we have a normative target in front of us, that every year we'll ensure that at least 75% of our money, the modernization budget, is spent within the country. And we've achieved that over the last 2 years. Last year it was as high as 88%. So this combination of factors, the fact that global buys would be an exception, that your Indian rupee contracts will dominate to the extent of 75%, and the fact that even when you do any import of platforms, you ensure that the bulk of those two are made in India, as you would have observed in respect of the prospective Rafale deal as well. So these sort of policy, this policy framework in a way ensures that that Atmanirbharta is built into the procurement process itself.
Let me ask you this, because we're seeing Operation Sindoor as perhaps one of those watershed moments. For the first time, you saw two nuclear powers go up against each other, and it has obviously sparked an entire new conversation about the way the wars of the future might be fought. Capital allocations have been made in the budget. How much of those have been made keeping in mind scenarios that emerge from Operation Sindoor? And I would like first for you to paint some of these scenarios.
Well, Obviously, during Operation Sindoor, you saw the use of mostly standoff weaponry, of precision munitions, of not too much of conventional warfare. A lot of use of different types of unmanned systems. In the Middle East today, also you're seeing something similar. The importance of air defense obviously has gone up, which is why the Honorable Prime Minister announced our version of a protective dome for the country, the Sudarshan Chakra mission, where we already have good capabilities, but we can improve it further in terms of bringing new cutting-edge elements to it. So all of those are lessons, and as I mentioned that as a part of that, drawing from those lessons, we've drawn up both an emergency procurement pipeline as well as a fast-track pipeline to meet some of these gaps in these critical areas. And while doing so, the emerging trends in warfare will, of course, be kept in mind.
So you want to match some of these or basically fill some of these gaps in developing the Sudarshan Chakra, because what we did see was a lot of beyond the line of sight munitions being used. Is Israel going to fill that gap? We know that they have Iron Dome capabilities. It's being tested even as we speak right now. Was that part of the conversation between the two prime ministers just a few days ago, sir?
Let me just say, I'm not privy to that conversation, of course, but I do want to say that we have a very detailed memorandum of understanding on defense cooperation with the Israeli side, which I signed in November when I was there. And we are building on that with a lot of industrial collaborations with their key Israeli companies, two of which are public sector companies, IAL and Rafael, and one is a private company, Elbit. All three are active in India. They've tied up with multiple Indian companies, including both public and private sector companies. Now, the intent is that in the coming years, you will see a lot of co-production and joint ventures happening in India, where Israeli and Indian companies will collaborate. They need India's scale and our labor, because obviously it's a small country. They will never be able to get the kind of scale and production that India can offer.